Today we have one of the world's most knowledgeable SEO experts. If you want to understand how to make SEO work for your business, you've got to listen to this podcast. Thank you GoDaddy for sponsoring this podcast. You as a listener get 40% off. The code is down below. Caroline, thank you so much for joining us today. Perhaps we could start off by telling the audience a little bit about what you do and who you are.
Well, thanks for inviting me on the show today. So my name is Caroline Revell. I work as a customer SEO specialist at GoDaddy. So GoDaddy are most known for their domain names, the website names that you can buy from them. But they're also a place where people go to start their businesses, creating their first website. So I work as part of the wider SEO team, helping our existing customers increase their website's visibility online. So my role is, in helping them with that and providing sort of sage advice and best practices.
So tell me, how does someone become an SEO expert? What's involved?
You need to do it. You need to have a page or a site in front of you, and you are trying to increase its visibility. It's kind of like you can't, learn to drive from a book. You've got to get in and fail, really. I think that's the essence. You need to have failed lots to work out, because there's no rule book with Google. Google's not telling us this is exactly how it all works. This is what you need to do. You just can't. You can do it in paid advertising online. You can do a course and so many other things, but not for SEO.
It feels to me like a lot of our community tell us anyway that SEO has become less relevant in the world now with the rise of social media and platforms like TikTok. But personally, I still search for a lot of things on Google. I know a lot of people do. What's been the change that you've seen with SEO? Do you see it still playing just as prominent a role as ever? Or
hugely relevant. I mean, I spent quite a long time in paid advertising. Because it's quick, you write your ad this morning, it's online right now, and the customers are clicking and they're coming through to your site. But my experience has been that a lot of people left SEO, left that sort of side of things to go into the paid ads, and they just left it completely. They left their website alone, they didn't touch it. And for so many businesses, it just is so competitive. It's so expensive that they realise, no, we need SEO. We need both now. And I've seen a lot of firms sort of, question, we're spending 4 times the amount on paid advertising online. I think people have come back to it. That's what I've seen in about the last sort of 18 months, 2 years, a lot more businesses realising, because people have looked more closely, I think, with the pandemic. People have said, hang on a minute, what are our ads doing? Our website. I think people have just turned and sort of lent into that more.
And it makes a lot more sense to do that, doesn't it? I think what happened was people did a really good job selling the system of selling ads. It's a very simple process.
It's an easy sale.
It's quick. Mm-hmm. Whereas SEO, correct me if I'm wrong, but my personal experience of SEO is it's a long process to make it work.
It's a long process.
And people aren't patient anymore.
No. There's a niche in it that, like, the technical SEO is what we see, I think, more increasingly. That's what I think what frustrates people, because they don't understand the terminology. And there's a lot of that around. Now, that is an easy sell. We'll do an SEO audit of your website. We will check out the technicals, and maybe it's a week's work or 2 weeks' work, and it's easy to bill, and it is all done quickly. But that's not the biggest part of SEO. The biggest part of it is that the content, the relevancy, understanding, getting in the head of your customers that you already have, getting in the head of the customers that you don't know that you could have. That's the other one. And the business owner, I guess we could say the business owner knows that better than anyone, but actually a lot of business owners don't know that. And it's because they've got their nose sort of stuck to the coalface, they're too close to it. So SEO, I think, is, it's about stepping back, you could be spending hours on your own with no distraction, stepping away from work and thinking, okay, who are my customers and who's out there then that I might not even know about, that might be really interested in my services, and I haven't even got any mention of that on my on my website. And coming back to like the other, like the social networks, you know, like and TikTok, etc. What happens when the person then comes off that channel and now wants to do business with you? You know, they might not get that response commenting on those channels, because I've done that. I've actually replied on those video channels and said like, oh, I'm really interested. Could you? And there's no reply. So
that's
then
a big mistake, by the way, if creators aren't replying.
Exactly.
I honestly say, I mean, I had a TikTok that had a couple of million views and had 20,000 comments. I replied to every single one. And I think that helps with your, you know, community build, which is vital these days. But I mean, just for a second, I want to go back to something really important that you were saying there, you know, putting yourself in the shoes of your existing customer and your potential customer, which is really interesting, actually. I think a lot of people might know who their existing customer is, but thinking about who else could be, and then putting search, I guess, into that universe. So do you do it from the perspective of imagining someone's going to Google and typing in something? Is that how you imagine someone getting to your page? And how do you construct an SEO strategy?
I think you think... often it's the old-fashioned way, sort of brains up, putting down some keywords, you know, on an old-fashioned piece of paper with a pen, and then just literally, it sounds a bit daft, but what I do is just sit looking at the word for a second and try and just empty my head of any preconceptions, and sometimes just looking at a word just for a little bit longer than who might be, what does that, oh, right, so that might lead me there. But it is a genuine brainstorm. It's not just, I've got everything in my head already. I'm going to put it on a piece of paper. And there it is. I've just put what's in my head. You're sort of going on a sort of mental journey. I can give you an example. So I was working, before GoDaddy a few years ago, I was working at a travel firm, very niche. It was in the volunteer sector. And I was doing this process. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, I'm doing these searches and I've got to hang on, what about, and it just one of those blue sky mode, like travel grants. I wonder if people looking for a travel grant might be a potential customer, even though my assumption is that they've got no money. So let's try it. And I think the other thing is experimentation. So I put up a piece of content on the site, curated it, like, these are the top 20 travel grants available around the UK. Got that out there. I must say I did put a few paid ads on it as well. So I thought I'd just play around with it. It wasn't expensive because there was no competition for that equally. And it got a bit of attention and calls came through. People started calling. So my assumption, actually, yes, they were a potential customer audience. Yes, they did book. But another thing I found out in the process that I had no idea about was people looking for travel grants. The people that were contacting us were not bottom of the budget customers. They were actually mostly quite well off students who were quite savvy on grants, who were contacting. And booking.
Interesting.
Yeah. So,
we've had a similar experience around like students. I mean, we don't charge for what we do, of course, but we assume that students have got a university degree, probably going to go get a job. So, but we put some content on there helping students figure out how to start a business of their own.
Yeah.
And it was surprising how many people engaged in that content because but we did also internally initially think, well, they probably, because they've got a degree and student debt.
Yeah, an assumption.
Probably have to go get a job to pay that student debt off, as opposed to start a business of their own. And we were wrong. People actually want to start a business.
It's the best way. Yeah. I think
it's a great tip, actually. Yeah. Kind of reframing. It's almost like this kind of feeds a little bit into your subconscious bias, doesn't it?
Yeah.
As well, you just assume certain things that aren't necessarily true, and therefore you don't make your business. Perhaps could be your client.
Exactly. And sometimes I think, and like when it connecting back to SEO, that sometimes the terminology that a business uses isn't that the customers are using. So I would recommend anyone to, even take phone calls, answer, even if you've got staff, answer the inbox from customers if that's not something that you normally do. Have a look through at what's come in, because what I noticed at the travel firm, that certain inquiries come in and then that language gets changed. It happens to us, doesn't it, with like tradesmen. We say it in plain English and then they give us the jargon and then we, okay, I'll follow your jargon. but that wasn't what we would call it. So we had a lot of student nurses calling and asking, what was it they were asking for? They were saying, oh, we're looking for medical electives or nursing electives. Now, the company did provide it, but they didn't know that they provided it. And they called it a volunteering placement in a hospital abroad. Mm-hmm. Right? And it was all fully supervised. It was exactly the same as a formally set up, but they called it differently. Mm-hmm. So when people called, we could, they're asking for nursing elective, and we say, we don't do that.
Right. Okay, yeah, well, that
we don't do that.
You know, what you're doing, what you've done there is really clever as well. I think what you're talking about that isn't talked about enough in this kind of what almost sounds boring SEO world is you're taking real world clients, real world people, and taking what they say and translating that into what they might search for, they might be looking for online, and not overlooking that human element, right, in that pursuit of the perfect search term or the perfect.
And I think especially if it's not your background. So the travel firm's background wasn't in that. There was no one in the firm that had ever come through medical school or nursing and didn't know anyone. So the first port of call was then to contact the universities and to say, look, this is what we offer. Does that match up? Would it be reasonable for us to call that a nursing elective or a nursing placement? Absolutely, yes. Universities signed up and they sent groups every year. There were about 5 universities. So moving that across to the SEO side, I created some content on nursing electives, got that out there, got some backlinks, which is in SEO is what we call authority. So got some backlinks pointing to that page from those universities.
Backlinks, just one second, back so people understand. Backlink would be a link from someone else's site to your site. To yours.
So it's you could see it in various different ways. It's the same thing like a golden handshake, a reference, but often people confuse it because they see, authority. And people say, well, I've got an authoritative site, I cover this topic in depth. That's not the same thing in SEO. Authority is the other sites giving you authority.
So to be clear, because for the listeners to pick up on that, ironically, around jargon. So let's say, for example, I've got a travel business and I want more people to use it to book a holiday to London. Getting time out to write about your travel offering
Great.
Would be the authority you mean.
But only by because they will have lots of links themselves. So Google and the other search engines, they don't know that Time Out is an authority. They don't know that. They'll go by, Time Out's got 1 million backlinks, for example. I don't know if they have, but if they had 1 million backlinks, then hey, that's got to be a fairly authoritative site, but in the SEO sense. Because Google doesn't understand what the content is. It hasn't quite reached there.
Right.
Yeah.
If this podcast is inspiring you to start or grow a business, then I recommend you use Tailor Brands. They are our sponsor for this podcast, and they help you not only craft a brand, but design merchandise and so much more. In the last year, I've used this site for every single one of my businesses. I couldn't recommend them more. And we've even negotiated a 40% off discount code for you. Just use PEP, P-E-P, when using their website to make your booking. Now, let's get back to the podcast.
What would be an authority then? So how does Google decide? I hear you totally. Time Out as the example, that backlink system. How does it determine what is authority and what isn't authority?
We don't know exactly. That's Google. We're scrambling around in the dark, trying things, testing things, and we see results, and that's all you can do. So many people have, tested this, that if you've got, if you've got 100 travel websites, Google won't know that, Thomas Cook are important. That's a household name. They don't know that. They can only go by, the relevancy, the content, and who else is pointing, who else has gone to the trouble, because it's not automatic. You can't click a button for this, can you? It's the other sites out there, it's an effort to link anyway. So it's not perfect, but generally, if you're looking at it from, if you were starting your own search engine, how else could you do it? How else could you know? Just thinking common sense now, how else could you know?
So is it volume of traffic, for example? Would that be a metric?
No, not necessarily, but we don't know. So it would be something, again, this is when you're testing, when you're doing it yourself, you can see
So you might place the content you've created there, for example, on 10, 15 different locations and see which one works.
Yeah.
So that would be a practical experiment someone could run, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I guess this is sometimes what PR companies sell as well, that they'll get your content out there and that will link back to your site and help you with SEO. So how important is it for something like that versus, say, your actual site itself, your site to hold the content in your site to be attracting the direct?
You want it on your site, definitely. And coming back to just more specifically on the backlinks. So years ago, it was all backlinks to your homepage, for example. But the great thing for the small to medium-sized business now is that that's slightly changed because it's just become so much more competitive now. It's the actual page, it's the internal page now, which gives the small to medium-sized business now a huge opportunity with SEO to be able to crack that. So you could have, I did it myself on a page, and I thought, this is quite an important page. I'll get 12 backlinks to that. And because we weren't, the site wasn't ranking for that, it was nowhere. It was literally dead. Didn't figure at all. But one dedicated page with some backlinks. And it was, was it about 9-10 weeks? It was hovering for a bit, and it was between position 1 and 3. The trap, but it was the internal page. And I think that's very exciting at the moment. There's a lot of people who know about it, but I think because before it was just homepage. So let's say, for argument's sake, Thomas Cook, we'll get, whatever. Let's say they not go out and get, because they would be linked to anyway naturally. Big firms don't have to do it. Airbnb doesn't have to do that anymore.
British Airways has become all linked back.
Everyone's linking to them anyway.
Go here sort of thing.
Exactly. But let's say they had then 3,000 links to their homepage years ago. How could you compete with that if you're just starting up your travel firm? It would be quite hard. But now the great thing is you can say, well, okay, I can't compete generally, but maybe I could compete with one area of my website. So
you do specialists going to Maldives, the 12 things you could do, and that could be a sublink.
And then that might be your page number 1, and you get 8,000 visitors a month.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And so for people that are listening that want to, I guess, understand the maybe 5 or 6 practical steps to getting SEO right on their site, could you talk us through the process? Like, for example, is it your own website and use backlinks? Is there a couple of best practice items?
I think the first one is always get the words on your site. A lot of, I think it's easy to miss it. I think especially for a small business owner. So I was speaking to a chap who was in his head he was a wholesaler. And I said, it's interesting, you haven't got cash and carry on your website. And he didn't see himself as, this comes back to, again, this thinking about who your potential customer is. And his competitors had cash and carry on, and they were getting double the traffic. Simple thing, it's just literally a word. But if that word isn't on your site, Google sometimes can understand, but it's not as smart as we think. So chair and stool, Google's going to get that. Consultant advisor, maybe, it's going to get that. But other terms, you can't trust that Google's going to know. Oh, wholesale, okay. No, sorry, your cash and carry, okay. I'll show you a wholesale site that doesn't have cash and carry in it.
So getting all those words on your site, that makes total sense. What else can people do?
And the length of the content as well. Used to be acceptable to have, 10 sentences. Write longer pieces of content than your competitors. You don't need to go overboard. If all your competitors have got 500 words on a page, you don't need to be thinking, oh my goodness, I've seen some sites have got blog posts that are 3,000 words long. You only need to do a little bit more than the competitor.
I think it's fair to say probably value content.
And value.
Bring value to that. So again, it's not just one sentence to get all the words in there.
Exactly. And coming back to the customer, what does your customer want what are their worries? What would you worry about? And a really easy way to get extra content on is FAQs.
Yeah, good idea. What else can people do?
on the, I think, right, so you've got your great content, your URL for the actual page, the www dot, try and make it as short as possible and to have your target keyword in there.
So search engines are still picking up on URLs.
Huge. Yeah, huge. And the shorter, the better. And it's the short ones and the keyword sort of closer to the others, closer to the sort of root domain, we call it.
So for those, everyone struggles to find a URL for their business these days. Even myself, purposefulproject.com. I would love purposeful.com, but it's not available. But if I did purposefulproject.com/helping entrepreneurs start a business, does that get picked up on Google as a?
Yeah. That's absolutely fine. Yeah.
Mental note to myself. But I think it's very useful for people listening to know that if they've got a long URL, there's still a tagging element to the, like you were saying earlier, the second page or the third page.
Yeah, exactly. The internal page. A lot of when I was working at a company before GoDaddy in an agency, I was regularly telling them that, don't worry about the homepage. A lot of site visits now, they'll never see your homepage because they'll be coming in on the internal page and then calling, making their inquiry or making a purchase. So we've moved on a bit from having to have this, all bells and whistles, fantastically designed original homepage. It's moved on a bit.
It's really interesting. So, just closing, is there anything you think the listeners need to know about SEO that will help them make their businesses more successful? Anything we haven't covered in today's podcast?
I think I'm just trying to think of anything else. No, I think essentially
spying on competitors.
Spying on competitors.
I like that. By the way. Let's spy on competitors. But what can we learn from competitors?
When are they? Business owners often know this because they're looking around and saying, "Why is he in that position?" Take a closer look. Go through their site. Why are they come out? Is it because they got cash and carry there?
Well, everyone now, basically millions of people listening, just go put cash and carry in your search engine words and you'll get everybody who cares about cash and carry. But it's true. It's this amazing, isn't it? You start thinking as a customer what they might be looking for as opposed to what you want people to think of you
exactly.
as. This starts becoming a branding exercise.
Yeah, exactly.
As well?
And exactly with the backlinking as well. It's, you're not trying to cheat Google. You're not trying to just reach out to people who naturally might be interested, like a customer in your business.
And just finally, what does PPC mean?
Pay per click.
Pay per click. Okay. And do you, and just concluding the podcast, I guess we've talked about paid a little bit for a second, and we've talked, I guess, about organic. And how do you see the mix between paid and organic? And one of the urban legends out there is at the moment, if you pay on, say, for example, TikTok for your media to be seen, then your organic dies, because these social media platforms want you to pay them. But what do you feel? From a SEO perspective, is paid go hand in hand with SEO?
You do everything you can, and then you see what's driving your business at the end of the day, isn't it? There've been famous campaigns on Facebook by big firms in years gone by, and it didn't work. So they pulled out. I think there was a big Coca-Cola, I think it was, or Pepsi, one of them, So you've got to try it. It's experimentation. So it's not, which ones should we? Because your business is unique.
And I think people have limiting belief systems as well. Like, for example, even myself, I see when I go on Google an ad, I never click on the ads. I always feel like they're not the genuine company. So I always look for the organic one down below. So I believe that ads are no good, but that's not true. I'm not, I'm just because I believe that doesn't mean other people do.
No, exactly. And some people don't differentiate between the ads and the organic. And a lot of people think that whatever is at number one, that's to do with Google, and Google knows that that's a really good company. And that I hear more of people outside the industry than anything else, that the one at number one is the number one firm.
It should be that way, I guess. But even being the number one doesn't mean you're the best. But still, it's a very good point, and I've learned something today. I think we will now start doing paid as well as organic. But thank you so much for taking time out to come and share your knowledge with us. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Pep Talk. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to follow The Purposeful Project on all our social media channels, where we're giving away even more free business secrets and entrepreneurial value. Again, we'd like to thank our sponsor GoDaddy for powering this podcast. From naming a business to buying a domain name to building your website for free, GoDaddy has you covered. For 40% off GoDaddy tools, click the link in the podcast note below and use the code GDXPepTalk. See you next time, entrepreneurs, and remember, you're not alone.